Hey, this is Lee, and this is In Brief. Today, we're going to talk about an issue that are affecting a lot of people, which is residential rent. And specifically, we're going to talk about what you should do if you are a residential landlord and your tenant tells you that he or she cannot pay this month's rent. Three things you should do: review your lease, um, collect more information from the tenant, and ultimately develop a strategy for how to handle the situation. So the first thing you should do is review your lease. Hopefully you have a lease. If you do, the provisions that you're going to want to take a careful look at are the default provisions and provisions relating to late rent. So with respect to default, right now, all courts are closed for everything but essential matters. Eviction is not considered an essential matter. In fact, evictions are on a temporary pause. And it's possible that that pause will be extended in the not so distant future. So there's not going to be any leverage from an eviction standpoint, but you still want to understand what the default provisions say and what kind of notice you have to give your tenant. The other provision that you're going to want to take a look at are the penalty and interest provisions, if any. That's something that you could potentially in a negotiation use as leverage. So, Mr. or Mrs. Tenant, understand that while not paying rent, you're accruing penalty and interest, and we expect that you will ultimately pay both of those things. So those are the provisions you want to be familiar with. You also want to just make sure that you're abiding by whatever notice provisions are spelled out in the lease so that whoever you're contacting actually receives the correspondence that you send them regarding the non-payment of rent. Next thing you want to do is collect information. So many tenants have a really good reason for not paying rent this month. They've lost income, they've lost their job, their spouse or partner has lost their job. Reach out to them, find out exactly why they're unable to pay rent, try to get it in writing. You're going to be using this information for two reasons. One, to assess whether or not you're going to grant some kind of deferment or forbearance in rent. And also, it's information that you're going to want to have down the road as government programs become available, as circumstances change. You want to have accurate information on hand, and you want to make sure that your tenant doesn't change the narrative down the road depending on what becomes available to him or her or to the family. The third thing you're going to want to do is you're going to want to use the information that you find in the lease and from your information gathering session to develop a strategy. And that strategy is going to be one of two things. It's going to be negotiation or collaboration. So you're going to decide whether or not you want to extract as much value out of the lease as you can, or whether you're going to work with the tenant to set up a payment plan or forbearance or deferment of rent. And that's going to really depend on how much time is left on the lease. If you're dealing with a tenant who is going to be leaving in a few months, no matter what, your best course of action might be to negotiate keeping the security deposit and some small additional amount of rent. And that might be the most you're going to receive anyway. If this is a longer term tenant, someone who's going to be here for 6 months, a year, longer than that, you have to look at it from a relationship standpoint and think about what kind of relationship you want to have when circumstances change and rent is again available to be paid. So you're going to want to kind of factor those things in determining what you want to do. So again, review your lease, collect as much information as you can, and then develop a strategy that makes sense for you both in the short term and long term. This has been In Brief.